In February 2026, Google borrowed £1 billion and promised to pay it back in 2126. That's not a typo. The people who will collect that money have not been born yet. Neither have their fund managers. Google is doing this to bankroll the AI race. A race that, by most scorecards, America is currently winning. And China is currently not losing quietly. So, 2 questions. Will Google still be on top when that bond comes due? And can America actually stay ahead? Honestly, nobody knows. Anyone who tells you they know is selling a newsletter. But here's what we do know. This movie has played before. In 1997, the last tech company to borrow money for 100 years was Motorola in 1997. And the timing rhymes almost too well. The world was in the middle of a technology revolution, analog to digital, 1G to 2G. Historians call that a coincidence. Historians are being polite because there's one more rhyme. Back then, the challenger did something free markets are not supposed to do. 13 governments sat down and agreed to stop competing with each other. 1 year after Motorola's bond, it lost the crown. It never got it back. So what actually happened? Let's wind the clock back. To understand the fall, you have to understand the height. Before mobile phones were pocket devices, phones were furniture. They sat on desks. They hung on walls. If the phone rang, the whole house knew your business. Privacy was basically go stand in the hallway and pray. Motorola changed that. In 1973, Motorola engineer Martin Cooper stood on a street in New York and made a call from a handheld mobile phone prototype. 10 years later, Motorola turned that idea into a commercial product. For years, Motorola was not just another company in mobile phones. It was the company people associated with mobile phones. That is why the 100-year bond matters. On the surface, it was a trophy. Confidence wearing a tuxedo and asking for a mortgage. It was the corporate equivalent of getting your name carved into a building. But timing is everything. 1997 was not a trophy year. Profits were sliding. The Asian crisis was hammering its chip business. The analog cash machine was aging, and the digital fog was rolling in. Digital promised better capacity, better quality, better security, and more room for new services. Everyone serious in the industry knew the change was coming. So did Motorola. But there was one massive problem. Which digital system would survive? And the answer was nobody knew. The whole thing was a standards knife fight in a parking lot. Europe was building around GSM. Qualcomm was pushing CDMA. Motorola had its own digital path through IDEN. Other systems were in the fight too, and none of them played nicely together. Carriers had to pick a path, buy equipment, build networks, and hope they had chosen correctly. Choose wrong, and congratulations, you just built a very expensive pile of crap. That made the transition expensive. It also made it slow-looking. From Motorola's point of view, there was no obvious reason to panic. Its existing business was still valuable, its brand was still strong, its phones were still wanted. The market had not yet settled on one digital winner. So Motorola did what market leaders often do. It protected the profitable core. It hedged across several futures. It waited for the fog to clear. That was not irrational, but it was dangerous, because the fog did not clear slowly. It cleared all at once. The turn came from Europe. At the time, Europe did not look like the natural place to decide the future of mobile phones. The United States looked more dynamic. Carriers could choose, technologies could compete, the market could sort winners from losers. Europe looked messier. Different countries had different systems. Borders mattered. A phone that worked in one country might not work cleanly in another. Drive across a border and your phone could basically enter witness protection. Gone. If you were betting on speed, you probably would have picked America. Then Europe made a different bet. In 1987, telecom operators and officials from 13 countries committed to one shared mobile standard. One system, one direction, one coordinated build. This was not the free market letting every system fight until one winner emerged. It was coordination first, competition second. And it had obvious weaknesses. The standard was a compromise. It had to satisfy many countries, many operators, and many industrial interests. It was not designed by one company with one clean engineering philosophy, a European standard, chosen by committee, built through coordination. Useful in Europe? Maybe, but not necessarily a global threat. And if you have ever seen a committee design anything, you know that is usually how you get a camel with a fax machine taped to it. That was the mistake. Because the most important feature of the European system was not that it was perfect. It was that everyone could build around it. Remember that sentence? We are going to need it again. In July 1991, Finland made the first commercial GSM call. The call itself was ordinary. A Nokia phone, a Finnish network, a former prime minister speaking to a local official. Strategically, it was not ordinary at all. Europe had turned many national markets into one larger market. A handset maker could design for one standard and sell across borders. A network supplier could build at scale. A carrier could invest knowing others were moving in the same direction. The technology did not need to be perfect. It just needed everyone to stop arguing long enough to build the damn thing. The alignment was the advantage. Once the market aligned, the flywheel started. One standard created a larger addressable market. A larger market created larger orders. Larger orders lowered costs. Lower costs made phones more accessible. More users created more feedback. More feedback helped companies improve phones faster. Better phones brought in more users. Every turn made the next turn faster. GSM passed 50 million subscribers in 1996. It passed 100 million connections in 1998. By 2004, GSM connections had passed 1 billion. This was not just a European story anymore. It was becoming a global platform. And the companies closest to that platform rose with it. Nokia in Finland, Ericsson in Sweden. They were sitting next to the fastest growing standard in the world, learning from it, shipping into it, and improving with it. Motorola was still strong, but the center of gravity was moving. And here is the uncomfortable part. Nothing in that flywheel requires having the best technology. It only requires alignment. So what was Motorola doing while this happened? Not nothing. That is important. Motorola made digital phones. It supported multiple standards. It had serious engineering talent. It was not blind to the transition, but its strategy was divided. First, it defended the old business. And to be fair, that old business was a cash cow. You do not shoot the cow while it is still handing you money. The StarTAC was a brilliant product, but its early success was still tied to the world Motorola already understood: premium handsets, carrier relationships, and the existing analog customer base. The danger was obvious, only later. A company can use a hit product to fund the future, or it can use a hit product to delay the future. Motorola leaned too far toward delay. Second, it hedged. It made GSM phones, but it was not built around GSM the way Nokia was. In the United States, it supported other digital paths. It also pushed IDEN, its own system, which found real users but did not become the global consumer standard. Motorola had bets everywhere: GSM, CDMA, IDEN, satellites. It was not betting on a horse. It was buying tickets on the whole damn racetrack. That sounds safe. But in a market moving towards scale, spreading bets can become its own trap. Third, Motorola made a much bigger bet above the whole standards war: the Iridium satellite project. The idea behind Iridium was bold. Instead of relying on national cellular networks, create a satellite system that could connect people almost anywhere on Earth. It was a vision of the endgame. Regular people were not asking for calls from the edge of the Sahara. They wanted a smaller phone that worked at the mall. While Motorola was looking above the network, the ground was changing faster than expected. Cellular coverage expanded. Handsets became cheaper. Users chose smaller phones, lower prices, and networks that already worked where they lived. In 1998, 1 year after the 100-year bond, Nokia passed Motorola to become the world's largest mobile phone maker. That was the turning point. Motorola was no longer setting the pace. It had invented the category. But Nokia was now defining the mass market. And Nokia earned it. It did not just ride the standard. It made phones people wanted: simpler, cheaper, friendlier. Nokia understood that the phone was becoming a consumer product, not just a radio box, not just a network terminal, something you carried every day, dropped on the floor, showed your friends, upgraded, personalized, and eventually treated like part of your personality. That sounds obvious now. It was not obvious then. Motorola still had one more hit. In the mid-2000s, the Razr became one of the most iconic phones ever made. Thin, shiny, expensive looking. The kind of phone that made people feel slightly cooler than they actually were. For a moment, it looked like Motorola had found the magic again. But after that peak, the decline was steady. As the industry shifted to smartphones, software, and ecosystems, Motorola fell behind again. The phone was no longer just hardware. It was becoming software in your pocket. And that was a different game. In 2011, the company split. In 2012, Google bought its phone business. In 2014, Google sold it to Lenovo. The brand survived. The control did not. And yes, Google bought Motorola's phones, and now Google issues the kind of century bond that Motorola made famous in 1997. If this were fiction, the editor would send it back. Motorola's bond is still out there. It is scheduled to mature in 2097. The empire that sold it is long gone. Somebody, somewhere, still wires the interest twice a year. The paperwork outlived the empire. Google's bond will still have 29 years to go that year. It has until 2126. Between now and 2126 sits an entire unknown century. AI models, chips, data centers, energy grids, open weights, closed platforms, national build-outs. Also, possibly, something nobody has invented yet. We do not know which of those will matter most. We do not know whether the AI race will be won by the smartest model, the cheapest inference, the largest ecosystem, the deepest capital pool, or the fastest flywheel. That is what makes the bond interesting. Not because it predicts the future, because it admits how much future there is to survive. 2-century bets, sitting side by side in the same market. And both were sold the same way. A leader, staring into a transition, cashing in its name to buy ammunition. Here is what Motorola learned the hard way. Money can buy ammunition. Time not buy time. Time is set by the market clock, and the clock belongs to whoever spins the flywheel fastest. That was true in 1997. It may be true again in 2126. The bill for 2026 arrives in 2126. See you then.